The hospice door swung open, and Dr. Elias Hart stepped into a room heavy with the scent of antiseptic and fading hope. His heart pounded not from nerves, but from the weight of a secret he'd carried for years, one that could unravel everything. By the end of his first week, that secret would turn this quiet Oregon hospice upside down. Elias was 32, with kind brown eyes and a smile that could disarm even the most guarded souls. He'd arrived in the small coastal town of Astoria to take over as the new palliative care doctor at Seaside Haven Hospice. The staff whispered about his credentials: Harvard Medical School, a fellowship at Johns Hopkins, but no one knew why he'd chosen this sleepy town over a glittering career in a big city. He was an enigma, his polished exterior hiding a storm within. On his first day, Elias met Leo Carter, a 28-year-old patient whose sharp wit and defiant spirit masked the pain of his terminal illness. Leo had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, diagnosed 6 months ago, and his days were numbered. Yet, his hazel eyes sparkled with life, and his laughter echoed through the hospice halls, a stark contrast to the somber air. "So, you're the new guy who's gonna fix me," Leo quipped, leaning back in his wheelchair, his voice laced with sarcasm but laced with curiosity. Elias chuckled, adjusting his stethoscope. "I'm here to make you comfortable, not perform miracles. But I'll do my best to keep up with you." Their banter sparked instantly, a flicker of connection neither expected. Leo's defiance intrigued Elias, and Elias's quiet strength drew Leo in. It was the start of something neither could name yet. The hospice was a microcosm of life and death, where every moment carried weight. The staff, a tight-knit group, watched Elias with cautious optimism. Nurse Maggie, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, took him under her wing, showing him the ropes while probing gently. "You're not like the others who come through here," she said one evening, handing him a coffee. "You've got a story, don't you?" Elias smiled faintly, deflecting with a joke, but her words lingered. He wasn't ready to share, not yet. Leo, meanwhile, was a force of nature. Despite his frail frame, he refused to let his illness define him. He'd been openly gay since high school, a choice that had cost him his family's acceptance in their conservative town. "They stopped talking to me when I came out," he told Elias during a late-night conversation in the hospice lounge. "Said I was a sin. But I'd rather die true to myself than live a lie." His words hit Elias like a punch, stirring memories he'd buried deep. Elias had grown up in a similar small town, where being different wasn't just frowned upon, it was dangerous. He'd hidden his truth, locked it away to survive. Medical school had been his escape, but it came at a cost: years of isolation, pretending to be someone he wasn't. Now, in Astoria, with Leo's fearless authenticity staring him in the face, Elias felt the walls he'd built begin to crack. Their connection grew over late-night talks and shared moments in the hospice garden. Leo would sketch the roses, his hands trembling but determined, while Elias read aloud from old novels. "You're not half bad for a doctor," Leo teased one evening, his voice softer than usual. Elias felt a warmth he hadn't known in years, but it terrified him. He was a doctor. Leo was his patient, and the secret he carried could destroy the fragile trust they were building. By the end of the first week, rumors began to swirl. The staff noticed how Elias lingered in Leo's room, how Leo's eyes lit up when Elias walked in. Maggie pulled Elias aside, her voice low. "Be careful, Dr. Hart. This place has a way of exposing hearts." Elias nodded, but inside, he was spiraling. He hadn't come to Astoria to fall in love, had come to make peace with a past he couldn't outrun. But Leo was changing everything, and Elias wasn't sure he could keep his secret much longer. As the days passed, the hospice buzzed with quiet tension. Leo's condition worsened, his pain more frequent, but he refused to let it dim his spirit. Elias found himself drawn to Leo's room, not just as a doctor, but as someone who saw himself in Leo's courage. One night, as rain tapped against the windows, Leo reached for Elias's hand. "You're hiding something," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I can see it in your eyes." Elias froze, his heart racing. The truth was clawing its way out, and he wasn't ready for what it would cost. Elias pulled his hand back, the warmth of Leo's touch lingering like a burn. He wanted to speak, to let the truth spill out, but fear held him silent. Instead, he adjusted Leo's foredrip, muttering about dosage levels to avoid those piercing hazel eyes. The hospice was a place of endings. But for Elias, it was starting to feel like a beginning one he wasn't prepared for. Leo's words echoed in his mind. "You're hiding something." He was right, but Elias couldn't risk exposing it. Not when it could cost him his job, his reputation, and the fragile bond he was forming with Leo. Over the next few days, their connection deepened despite Elias's caution. Leo had a way of breaking through his defenses, whether with a sarcastic quip or a quiet moment of vulnerability. One afternoon, in the hospice's small library, Leo handed Elias a worn sketchbook. "Doodles," he said with a shrug, but the pages were filled with intricate drawings, landscapes, faces, and one sketch of Elias, his eyes captured with startling accuracy. "You've got kind eyes," Leo said, his voice soft. "But they're sad." "Why?" Elias swallowed hard, closing the sketchbook. "Just tired," he lied. But Leo's gaze told him he wasn't fooled. The truth was, Elias was gay, a fact he'd hidden since he was a teenager. Growing up in rural Idaho, he'd seen what happened to those who didn't conform: shunned, beaten, or worse. He'd buried that part of himself, building a life around ambition and denial. But Leo, with his unapologetic authenticity, was unraveling years of carefully constructed armor. The hospice staff began to notice the shift. Nurse Maggie caught Elias laughing with Leo over a shared joke, a rare sound from the reserve doctor. "You're good for him," she said, but her tone carried a warning. "Just don't get too close. It's hard to lose them when you do." Elias nodded, but her words felt like a prophecy. Losing Leo was inevitable, but the thought already ached. Outside the hospice, Astoria was grappling with its own tensions. The town was small, conservative, and whispers about the new doctor were spreading. A local pastor, Reverend Daniels, had taken an interest in Seaside Haven, visiting to offer prayers for the patients. His presence unnerved Elias, who'd grown up under the shadow of similar figures preaching fire and brimstone. When Daniels lingered after a visit, eyeing Elias with suspicion, the doctor's unease grew. "We keep a close eye on newcomers," Daniels said, his smile cold. "Astoria values tradition." Elias brushed it off, but the encounter stirred old fears. He threw himself into his work, spending late nights reviewing charts and sitting with patients. But Leo was always there, pulling him back. One evening, as they sat in the garden, Leo shared more of his story. "I came out at 16, he said, staring at the roses. "My dad kicked me out, said I was no son of his. I built a life anyway, but it's lonely when no one's in your corner." Elias wanted to tell Leo he understood, that he'd faced the same rejection, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he shared a piece of himself. "I lost someone once," he said, his voice barely audible. "Someone I cared about. I couldn't save them." It wasn't the whole truth, but it was close. Leo reached out, his hand steady despite his weakness. "You're saving me every day you're here," he said. The words hit Elias like a tidal wave, and for a moment, he let himself imagine a world where he could be honest, where he could love without fear. But the world wasn't that kind. The next day, a letter arrived at the hospice. Anonymous but venomous. It accused Elias of unnatural behavior and warned him to leave Astoria. The words were a knife to his gut, dragging him back to the boy who'd hidden in the shadows. He showed it to Maggie, who cursed under her breath. "Small towns," she said. "Some people can't stand seeing others live their truth." Elias crumpled the letter, but its weight lingered. That night, unable to sleep, Elias found Leo awake, staring out his window. "You look like you're carrying the world," Leo said. Elias sat beside him, the silence heavy. "I'm scared," he admitted, the words slipping out before he could stop them. Leo's hand found his, and this time, Elias didn't pull away. "Whatever it is," Leo said, "you don't have to carry it alone." For the first time in years, Elias felt seen. But the cost of being known was a risk he wasn't sure he could take. The warmth of Leo's hand anchored Elias, but it also terrified him. He'd spent his life running from moments like this, where vulnerability could lead to ruin. As dawn broke over Astoria, Elias knew he was standing on a precipice, one wrong step, and everything could collapse. The hospice routine continued, but the anonymous letter had shifted something. Elias felt eyes on him everywhere: staff, patients, even strangers in town. Paranoia crept in, fueled by memories of his past. He'd been 17 when his high school crush, a boy named Caleb, had been outed. The fallout was brutal. Caleb's family disowned him, and the town turned vicious. Elias had stayed silent, too scared to admit his own feelings. Caleb left, and Elias never saw him again. The guilt still haunted him. And now, with Leo, history felt dangerously close to repeating. Leo, unaware of the letter, noticed Elias's unease. "You're jumpier than a cat in a storm," he teased during a physical therapy session. Elias forced a smile, helping Leo with his exercises. But Leo's strength was fading, his movements slower, his breath shallower. Each sign of decline was a reminder of the ticking clock, pushing Elias to confront what he felt before it was too late. The hospice garden became their sanctuary. One evening, as they sat under a sky streaked with pink and gold, Leo opened up further. "I used to dream of opening an art gallery," he said, his voice wistful. "A place where people like me, outcast scowled, belong. I thought I had time." Elias's chest tightened. "You still have time," he said, but the words felt hollow. Leo's smile was sad but knowing. "Time's a thief, Doc. Don't let it steal from you." Those words lingered, gnawing at Elias. He wanted to tell Leo everything about Caleb, about his own hidden identity, about the fear that kept him silent. But the letter's venom held him back. Who had sent it? Was it Reverend Daniels, with his probing stares? Or someone closer? Someone within the hospice walls? The uncertainty was suffocating. Maggie, ever observant, cornered Elias in the break room. "You're not sleeping," she said, her tone maternal but firm. That letter's got you spooked, hasn't it? Elias hesitated, then nodded. I've seen this before, she said. Folks here don't always take kindly to difference. But you're a good man, Elias. Don't let cowards run you off. Her support was a lifeline, but it didn't erase the fear. The tension in Astoria escalated. At a town meeting, Reverend Daniel spoke out against moral decay infiltrating the community, his eyes lingering on Elias, who'd attended to support the hospice's funding. The words weren't directed at him explicitly, but they didn't need to be. The crowd's murmurs felt like a tightening noose. Elias left early, his heart racing, and went straight to Leo's room. Leo was sketching, his hands steadier than they'd been in days. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said, setting his pencil down. Elias sat, the weight of the evening spilling out. This town, it's like the one I grew up in. They don't forgive people like me. The confession slipped out, raw and unguarded. Leo's eyes softened. People like us, you mean? He asked gently. Elias froze. The truth laid bare. He nodded, unable to speak. For a moment, silence held them. Then Leo reached out, his touch a quiet promise. You don't have to hide with me, he said. Elias's walls crumbled, and he let himself feel the truth he'd denied for so long. He was falling for Leo, and it was both exhilarating and terrifying. But the world outside their bubble was closing in, and Elias knew the anonymous threats were only the beginning. The next day, another letter arrived. This one more explicit. We know what you are. Leave, or we'll make you. Elias's hands shook as he read it, the words a mirror to his deepest fears. He hid it from Leo, but the secret was becoming a wedge between them. As Leo's condition worsened, Elias faced a choice: stay silent and safe, or risk everything to be the man Leo believed he could be. Elias tucked the second letter into his desk drawer, its words burning in his mind. He couldn't tell Leo not when Leo's health was declining so rapidly. But the secret was a poison, seeping into every moment they shared. Leo's condition was deteriorating. His pain was harder to manage, and he spent more time in bed, his sketches left unfinished. Yet, his spirit remained unbroken. You're stuck with me, Doc, he said one morning, his voice weak but playful. Elias forced a smile, adjusting Leo's pillow. Good. I'm not going anywhere. But the lie tasted bitter. The letters were a warning, and Elias felt the walls closing in. The hospice staff sensed the shift. Maggie watched Elias with growing concern, noticing how he flinched at sudden noises, how his eyes darted to the windows. You need to tell someone what's going on, she urged one night, catching him alone in the chart room. You can't carry this by yourself. Elias wanted to confide in her, but the risk was too great. If the truth came out, it wouldn't just be his job at Stake, would be Leo's trust. Outside, Astoria was a powder keg. Reverend Daniel's sermons grew more pointed, rallying a small but vocal group against outsiders disrupting the town's values. Elias avoided town as much as possible, but the hospice wasn't a safe haven either. Whispers followed him, staff members exchanging glances, patients' families asking pointed questions about his personal life. He felt exposed, raw, like a nerve laid bare. Leo, despite his pain, remained Elias's anchor. One afternoon, as rain battered the hospice windows, Leo asked Elias to read from The Great Gatsby, his favorite book. It's about chasing something you can't have, Leo said, his eyes distant. But sometimes, the chase is what makes you feel alive. Elias's voice cracked as he read, the words blurring on the page. He wanted to tell Leo he was chasing something real, something worth the risk. That night, Elias made a decision. He couldn't keep running. He wrote a letter of his own, not to send, but to clarify his thoughts. In it, he poured out everything, his love for Leo, his fear of being outed, the guilt over Caleb. I've spent my life hiding, he wrote, but you make me want to be brave. He tucked the letter away, unsure if he'd ever share it. But the act of writing it felt like a step toward freedom. The next day, a small act of defiance changed everything. Leo, determined to leave a mark, convinced Elias to help him hang his sketches in the hospice lounge. The drawings were raw, beautiful, a testament to Leo's spirit. Patients and staff gathered, marveling at the work. For a moment, the hospice felt like a community, not a battleground. But the moment was fleeting. That evening, Elias found a third letter slipped under his office door. You're not welcome here. Leave, or we'll expose you. The threat was a gut punch, but it also ignited something in Elias. He was tired of fear dictating his life. He went to Leo's room, his heart pounding. I need to tell you something, he said, his voice trembling. Leo looked up, his face pale, but his eyes steady. I'm listening, he said. Elias took a breath, the words he'd buried for years rising to the surface. I'm gay, he said, the confession a release and a risk. And I'm falling for you. Leo's smile was soft, radiant. Took you long enough, he said, reaching for Elias's hand. The moment was perfect, but it was also the calm before the storm. Outside, the town was watching, and the letters were only the beginning. Elias had crossed a line, and there was no going back. Elias's confession hung in the air, a fragile truth binding him to Leo. For the first time, he felt free, but freedom came with a cost. The hospice, once a refuge, now felt like a battlefield where every glance carried judgment. Leo's health continued to decline. His moments of clarity were fewer, his pain more relentless. Yet, his connection with Elias grew stronger. They spent hours talking, sharing stories of dreams they'd abandoned and hopes they still clung to. Leo told Elias about his first love, a boy from high school who'd left town after a brutal attack. I never stopped loving him, Leo admitted. But I learned to love myself more. Elias listened, his heart aching with recognition. He wanted to be that brave, but the letters loomed like a guillotine. The third letter had shaken Elias, but he refused to let it control him. He confided in Maggie, showing her the notes. Her face hardened. This is cowardice, she said. We protect our own here. You're one of us, Elias. Her support bolstered him, but the fear remained. Who was watching? Who knew? The hospice's small staff was loyal, but Astoria was a small town, and secrets didn't stay buried long. Reverend Danielle's influence grew. At a community fundraiser for the hospice, he cornered Elias, his voice low and menacing. We don't need your kind stirring trouble, he said. Think about your patients. The threat was clear, and Elias felt the weight of his past crashing down. He'd lost Caleb to fear. He couldn't lose Leo too. But protecting Leo meant confronting the town and himself. Elias began to push back. He spoke at a staff meeting, advocating for inclusivity training, framing it as patient care but knowing it was a stand for himself. Some staff nodded. Others shifted uncomfortably. The divide was clear. But Elias felt alive, like he was finally stepping into his truth. Leo noticed the change. "You're different," he said one evening, his voice weak but warm. "Braver." Elias squeezed his hand, the gesture saying what words couldn't. But bravery invited danger. One night, Elias's car was vandalized. The word "freak" scrawled across the windshield. He reported it to the police, but the officer's dismissive tone told him justice wasn't coming. Maggie and a few staff rallied around him, cleaning the car and offering support. But the incident left Elias shaken. He began to question whether staying in Astoria was worth the risk, not just to himself, but to Leo. Leo, sensing Elias's turmoil, pushed him to stay. "You're not just a doctor," he said, his eyes fierce despite his frailty. "You're proof that we can exist, that we can love. Don't let them win." His words were a lifeline, but they also raised the stakes. Elias wasn't just fighting for himself anymore, was fighting for Leo, for the life they could have had in a different world. The hospice organized a memorial event for a patient who'd passed, and Leo insisted on attending, wheelchair and all. Elias helped him, their hands brushing as they moved through the crowd. For a moment, they were just two people in love, not a doctor and patient, not a secret and a scandal. But Reverend Daniels was there, his gaze cold and calculating. As the event ended, he approached Elias, handing him a pamphlet about redemption. "Think about your soul," he said. Elias crumpled the pamphlet, his resolve hardening. That night, Elias stayed late in Leo's room, reading poetry until Leo fell asleep. As he watched Leo's chest rise and fall, Elias made a vow he'd protect what they had, no matter the cost. But the cost was coming, and it would test everything he believed in. The hospice was quiet, but the silence felt like the calm before a storm. Elias's vow to protect Leo was unshakable, but the world outside was conspiring against them. The letters, the vandalism, Reverend Daniels's veiled threats, they were all pieces of a puzzle pointing to a reckoning. Leo's health took a sharp turn. His pain was constant now, his moments of lucidity fleeting. Elias adjusted his medications, consulted specialists. But the truth was stark. Leo didn't have long. Every moment with him felt stolen, precious. They spent evenings in the garden, Leo bundled in blankets, Elias reading or simply holding his hand. "You make this bearable," Leo whispered one night, his voice barely audible. Elias's heart broke, but he smiled. "You make me better," he said, and he meant it. The town's hostility grew bolder. A petition circulated, demanding Elias's removal from the hospice for unprofessional conduct. It was vague but pointed, signed by Reverend Daniels and a handful of locals. Maggie was furious, rallying the staff to defend Elias. But the board was nervous. "We can't afford a scandal," one member said during a tense meeting. Elias sat silently, his hands clenched. He wasn't just fighting for his job, was fighting for his right to exist. Leo, unaware of the petition, sensed the strain. "You're carrying too much," he said one afternoon, his eyes searching Elias's. "Let me help." Elias wanted to shield him, but Leo's strength, even in weakness, was undeniable. "You already are," Elias said, his voice thick. He told Leo about the petition, leaving out the ugliest details. Leo's jaw tightened. "They're scared of you," he said, "because you're living a truth they can't handle." Elias drew strength from Leo's words, but the pressure was mounting. Another letter arrived. This one slipped into his coat pocket. "You'll regret staying." The handwriting was different, suggesting more than one person was involved. Elias confided in Maggie, who insisted on hiring security for the hospice. "This isn't just about you anymore," she said. "It's about all of us." Her words reminded Elias that his fight was bigger than himself. It was for every person who'd ever been forced to hide. The hospice staff rallied, organizing a counter-petition to support Elias. Patients, including those with little time left, added their names, moved by his compassion. Leo, too weak to write, dictated a statement. Dr. Hart gave me hope when I had none. Reading it, Elias felt a surge of purpose. He wouldn't let fear win out this time. But the town wasn't done. At a community vigil for hospice patients, Reverend Daniels took the stage, preaching about protecting the community. His words were coded, but the crowd understood. A few shouted slurs, their voices cutting through the night. Elias stood at the back, Leo's wheelchair beside him, and felt the weight of every eye. Leo squeezed his hand. "Don't let them break you," he whispered. Elias nodded, but inside, he was unraveling. That night, alone in his office, Elias wrote another letter to himself, a promise to fight. "I won't run," he wrote. "Not from Leo. Not from myself." He tucked it away with the others, a quiet act of defiance. But as he left the hospice, he noticed a shadow near his car, a figure watching, then disappearing into the dark. The threat was no longer just words, and Elias knew the next move could change everything. The shadow by Elias's car haunted him, a reminder that the threats were no longer abstract. He doubled down on his work, spending every spare moment with Leo, whose time was slipping away. The hospice was their world now, a fragile bubble where love could exist, even if the outside world wanted to crush it. Leo's condition was critical. He was bedbound, his sketches abandoned, but his spirit burned bright. "Tell me something real," he said one night, his voice a whisper. Elias hesitated, then spoke of Caleb, the boy he'd loved and lost to fear. "I didn't stand up for him," Elias confessed, tears in his eyes. "I won't make that mistake with you." Leo's smile was weak but radiant. "You already have," he said, his hand finding Elias's. The town's campaign against Elias intensified. Reverend Daniels organized a protest outside the hospice, a small but loud group waving signs about family values. The hospice board wavered, scheduling an emergency meeting to discuss Elias's position. Maggie and the staff fought back, presenting their petition and patient testimonies. "Dr. Hart is the best we've had," Maggie argued. "You fire him. You're firing compassion." The board delayed a decision, but the pressure was relentless. Elias felt the walls closing in, but Leo gave him strength. One evening, Leo asked Elias to help him write letters to his estranged family. "I don't expect them to forgive me," Leo said, "but I want them to know I lived my truth." Elias helped, his heart breaking as Leo poured out his love and pain. The act inspired Elias to act. He wrote an open letter to the hospice community, not revealing his sexuality, but affirming his commitment to his patients. "I'm here to serve," he wrote. "No one can take that from me." The letter was posted on the hospice bulletin board, and the response was mixed. Some staff hugged Elias. Others avoided his gaze. Patients, though, were unwavering. An elderly woman, Mrs. Thompson, grabbed his hand during rounds. "You're a good man, Dr. Hart. Don't let the haters win." Her words were a balm. But the fight was far from over. The threats escalated. Elias's apartment was egged. And another note appeared, last warning. He reported it. But the police were unresponsive. Maggie suggested he take leave. But Elias refused. If I leave, they win, he said. Instead, he leaned on Leo, whose courage was a beacon. You're my hero, Leo said one night, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. Elias kissed his forehead, the gesture natural, unguarded. It was the first time he'd let himself cross that line, and it felt like coming home. But the outside world wouldn't let them rest. The night of the board's final decision, a brick crashed through Elias's office window. A note tied to it, "Get out." The hospice went into lockdown, and Elias's resolve hardened. He wouldn't run out from Leo, not from himself. As he sat with Leo, holding his hand, he knew the fight was about to reach its peak, and the outcome would define them both. The brick through Elias's window was a declaration of war, but it also lit a fire in him. He was done hiding. As the hospice staff cleaned up the glass, Maggie stood by him, her voice fierce. "This ends now," she said. "We're fighting back." Leo was fading, his breath shallow, his moments of clarity rare. Elias stayed by his side, reading, talking, or just sitting in silence. "I'm not scared," Leo whispered one night. "Because of you." Elias's heart shattered, but he held on, determined to give Leo every moment he could. He knew the end was near, but he also knew their love had changed him forever. The hospice board's meeting loomed, and Elias prepared for the worst. He wrote a speech, not just to defend his job, but to stand for who he was. The night before, he sat with Leo, reading the speech aloud. "You're going to make them listen," Leo said, his voice weak but proud. Elias kissed his hand, tears falling. "For you," he said. The meeting was packed staff, patients' families, townspeople, and Reverend Daniels, whose presence was a dark cloud. Elias stood, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I came to Astoria to care for people," he began. "I've given my heart to this hospice, to my patients. But I've also hidden who I am, because I was afraid. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm gay, and I love someone here. That doesn't make me less of a doctor, it makes me human." The room erupted. Some clapped. Others shouted. Reverend Daniel stood, his face red. But Maggie cut him off, presenting the staff's petition and patient letters. Mrs. Thompson, frail but fierce, spoke from her wheelchair. Dr. Hart saved my son's dignity in his final days. You fire him, you lose us all. The board, moved by the outpouring, voted to keep Elias. The victory was bittersweet. That night, Leo's condition worsened. Elias stayed with him, holding his hand as the monitors beeped. "You did it," Leo whispered, his eyes bright despite the pain. "You're free." Elias sobbed, kissing Leo's forehead. "I love you," he said, the words a vow. Leo smiled, his grip weakening. "Love you too," he said, and then he was gone. The loss gutted Elias, but it also galvanized him. He stayed in Astoria, turning the hospice into a beacon of acceptance. Leo's sketches were displayed in a permanent exhibit, a testament to his spirit. The threat stopped, and Reverend Daniel's influence waned as the town began to change. Slowly but surely, Elias carried Leo's love with him, a light that guided him through the grief. Years later, Elias opened an art gallery in Leo's name, a place for outcasts to belong, just as Leo had dreamed. At the opening, he unveiled a plaque with Leo's words, "Live your truth." Elias had, and it had cost him everything, but it had also given him everything. He was no longer the man who'd walked into the hospice, hiding his heart. He was free, and Leo's love was the key.